Jake Morrison crouched behind a fallen tree on the alien world. His rifle felt heavy in his hands after 12 hours of running through the purple jungle. The leaves above him dripped with something that looked like water but smelled like metal. Everything on this planet seemed wrong to human eyes. 3 weeks ago, Jake and his team of Navy SEALs had received their mission orders. Human colonies on the outer rim were going silent. Ships would arrive at planets that should have been full of people, but they found empty buildings and signs of struggle. Someone was taking humans, and Earth Command wanted to know who. The planet. Kepler 442b was supposed to be their last stop before heading home. Intelligence reports said this world had a small research station with 50 people. When Jake's team arrived, they found the station intact, but empty. Coffee cups still sat. On tables, food was half-eaten on plates. It looked like everyone had just vanished in the middle of their day. Jake's team had spread out to search the area. Marine Sergeant Pete Collins took the north side of the compound. Corpsman Danny Wright went east toward the communications tower. Jake headed south with Private First Class Amy Rodriguez, the team's tech specialist. They had been searching for 2 hours when the attack came. The enemy moved like shadows through the purple trees. Jake caught a glimpse of them before the shooting started. They were tall, maybe 8 feet, with scaly green skin that seemed to shift color like a chameleon. Their weapons fired bolts of bright blue energy that turned trees into ash where they hit. "Contact! Contact!" Jake shouted into his radio. "We have hostiles. Unknown number." Amy dove behind a boulder as energy bolts sizzled past her head. She returned fire with her assault rifle, but the bullets seemed to bounce off some kind of energy. Shield around the aliens. Jake rolled to his left and came up firing, trying to draw their attention away from Amy. The radio crackled with voices. Pete was under attack too. "Danny wasn't responding at all, Jake," Amy called out. "These things have shields. Normal rounds aren't working." Jake pulled a grenade from his vest. The aliens were advancing, their weapons charging up for another volley. He pulled the pin and threw it into their group. The explosion knocked 2 of them down, but 3 more appeared from the jungle. "We need to move." Jake grabbed Amy's arm. "Fall back to the landing zone." They ran through the alien forest, jumping over strange rocks and dodging hanging vines that tried to grab at them. Behind them, Jake could hear the aliens crashing through the brush. Their voices sounded like a mix of growling and clicking. Jake's earpiece buzzed. It was Pete. "Jake, I'm pinned down at the north building. There's at least a dozen of them. Danny's not responding to radio calls. Copy that. Amy and I are moving to extract you." But as they reached the research station, Jake saw it was too late. The building where Pete had taken cover was surrounded. Blue energy bolts lit up the walls like deadly fireworks. Jake counted at least 20 aliens moving in organized groups around the compound. "We're outnumbered," Amy said, breathing hard. "We need to call for pickup." Jake tried the radio, but only static came back. "They're jamming us. We're on our own." An explosion shook the ground. The north building where Pete was hiding started to collapse. Jake saw a figure running from the wreckage, but energy bolts cut him down before he made it 10 feet. Amy started to move toward their fallen teammate, but Jake held her back. "He's gone. We have to keep moving." They made it to the communications tower where Danny was supposed to be. They found his body at the base of the structure. The aliens had destroyed all the equipment. Jake looked around. The aliens had them surrounded, but they weren't closing in for some reason. They seemed to be waiting for something. "Why aren't they attacking?" Amy whispered. Jake studied the enemy positions. The aliens were disciplined, moving in formations like trained soldiers. Their equipment looked advanced, and they clearly had superior firepower. But they were being careful, taking their time. "They want us alive," Jake realized. A new sound filled the air. Jake looked up to see a large ship descending from the clouds. It was sleek and dark, about the size of a city bus, with no visible engines but somehow staying in the air. The ship settled down in the clearing near the research station. More aliens came out of the ship. These ones were different. They wore what looked like armor made of black metal, and they carried weapons that hummed with energy. One of them was clearly in charge. He was taller than the others, and had bright red markings on his scales. The alien commander said something in his clicking language. The other aliens began moving in closer. Jake Amy said quietly, "I've got maybe 30 rounds left." Jake checked. His own ammunition? Not much better. Against this many enemies with energy shields, it wouldn't matter anyway. "Amy, I need you to do something for me."
What?
"There's a drainage pipe that runs from this tower back toward the landing zone. It's big enough to crawl through. I saw it when we first landed." Amy looked at him with wide eyes. "You want me to run?" "I want you to get back to the ship and warn Earth Command. Tell them what we found here. Tell them these aliens are organized and dangerous. I'm not leaving you. It's an order, Marine." Jake stood up from their hiding spot and opened fire on the nearest group of aliens. His bullets bounced off their shields, but it got their attention. All of them turned toward him. "Go now," he shouted to Amy. Amy hesitated for a second, then ran toward the drainage pipe. Jake kept firing, moving from cover to cover, trying to lead the aliens away from her escape route. The alien commander raised his weapon. Instead of the blue energy bolts the others used, his weapon fired something that looked like lightning. It hit the tree next to Jake and turned it into dust. Jake dove and rolled, but more aliens were closing in from all sides. He threw his last grenade and took down 2 more, but there were too many. An energy bolt hit his rifle and melted it in his hands. Jake drew his sidearm and kept fighting. He managed to drop 3 more aliens before something hit him in the back. It felt like being struck by lightning, but instead of killing him, it made his whole body go numb. Jake fell to the ground, unable to move. The alien commander walked over and looked down at him. The creature's eyes were yellow with black slits, like a snake's eyes. It said something in its clicking language. 2 aliens picked Jake up and carried him toward their ship. As they loaded him inside, Jake saw Amy disappearing into the drainage pipe. At least one of them would make it home. The inside of the alien ship was dark and warm. Jake was thrown into a small cell with walls that seemed to be made of some kind of living metal. As the ship lifted off, Jake could see the research station getting smaller below them. The alien commander came to look at him through the cell. Barzit spoke, and Jake was surprised to hear words he could understand. "Human soldier," the alien said in broken English, "you fight well. You will make good sport in the arena." "Arena?" Jake managed to say. The alien showed what might have been a smile, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "You will see. The crowds will enjoy watching you die." As the ship carried him away from Kepler 4 to B, Jake Morrison began planning his escape. Had been captured, his team was dead or scattered, but he was still alive. And as long as he was alive, he would keep fighting. The alien commander was wrong about one thing, though. Jake Morrison wasn't going to die in their arena. He was going to show them exactly why Earth had never been conquered. The alien ship traveled through space for 6 days before reaching its destination. Jake spent the time studying everything he could see through the small window in his cell. The aliens he had fought were called Zephyrians, according to what he overheard from the guards. They seemed to run a large empire that controlled many star systems. Jake learned their daily routines during the journey. The guards changed shifts every 8 hours. They brought him food twice a day, some kind of protein paste that tasted terrible, but kept him alive. Most importantly, he noticed they were not as careful as they should have been. They treated him like he was already beaten. On the 7th day, Jake saw a massive planet through his window. It was mostly red and orange, with huge cities that glowed like jewels against the surface. The alien commander, who Jake had learned was called General Vex, came to see him as they approached. "Welcome to Zephyr Prime," General Vex said in his broken English, "your new home. Though you will not live long enough to see much of it." The ship landed at a spaceport bigger than anything Jake had ever seen. Hundreds of ships from different worlds sat on landing pads that stretched to the horizon. Jake saw creatures he had never imagined, some walking on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6 or 8. The Zephyrian Empire was huge. They took Jake from the ship in chains made of some kind of energy that burned his wrists if he tried to break free. The guards marched him through crowded streets filled with aliens of all kinds. Many stopped to stare at him. some pointed and made sounds that might have been laughter. The city was a mix of ancient stone buildings and modern technology. No floating. Vehicles moved between towers that reached into the clouds. Holographic signs advertised things Jake couldn't read. Everything was built for people much larger than humans. After an hour of walking, they reached the Grand Coliseum. Jake had seen pictures of the Roman Coliseum back on Earth, but this was 10 times bigger. The walls rose so high he couldn't see the top. The entrance was guarded by massive stone statues of different alien creatures, all shown in fighting. Poses inside, they took Jake deep underground. The tunnels beneath the Coliseum were like a maze, with cells carved into the rock walls. The air smelled of fear and death. Jake could hear roars and growls coming from the darkness, sounds that made his skin crawl. They threw Jake into a cell with 3 other prisoners. The first was a blue-skinned alien with 4 arms who sat in the corner rocking back and forth. The second looked almost human, except for the gills on his neck and the fins on his arms. The third was something Jake had never seen before, like a walking tree with eyes. Another one for the games, the fish-like alien said in perfect English. "What world are you from, friend?" "Earth," Jake replied, sitting down on the stone floor. "Name's Jake. How do you speak my language?" "Universal." "Translator implant," the alien pointed to a small device behind his ear. "All the slaves get them so we can understand the crowds when they cheer for our deaths." "I'm Captain Nix of the Aquatic Republic. Been here 3 months." The tree creature made a sound like wind through leaves. "I am Grutka of the Forest Worlds. Here for 5 months. They keep me alive because I am hard to kill." The blue alien just kept rocking and didn't speak. "What happened to him?" Jake asked, nodding toward the corner. Corvin Nix said sadly, "He's been here the longest. Watched too many friends die in the arena. Broke his mind." Oh. Jake looked around the cell. The walls were solid rock. The door was made of the same energy that formed his chains, and there were no windows. But he had been in worse situations during his SEAL training. "Tell me about these games," Jake said. Nix and Gruka exchanged looks. "You really want to know?" Nix asked. "I need to know," Nix sighed, water bubbling from his gills. "The Zephyrians love to watch fights. They capture the strongest warriors from worlds they conquer and make them fight in the arena. Sometimes it's prisoner against prisoner. Sometimes it's prisoners against their combat beasts." "What combat beasts?" "Creatures they've collected from across the galaxy," Gruka said in his windy voice. "Predators from 100 different worlds. Things that give nightmares to entire species." Nix nodded. "I've seen them bring down creatures twice my size in seconds. Zephyrians breed them for one purpose: to kill." Jake processed this information. "How many prisoners usually fight at once?" "It depends on the event. Sometimes one-on-one. Sometimes they'll throw a dozen prisoners into the arena with a pack of beasts and see who survives." "Anyone ever escape?" Nix laughed bitterly. "From the arena? Never? From the cells? A few have tried. The energy barriers kill you if you touch them wrong. Even if you got out, where would you go? Out were in the middle of their capital city on their home world." Jake spent the next few hours asking questions and learning everything he could about the Coliseum. The guards brought meals twice a day. There were exercise periods where prisoners could walk in a larger chamber under heavy guard. The fights happened every few days with bigger events on special occasions. On his 3rd day in the cell, something interesting happened. A new prisoner was brought in. She was human. The guards threw her into the cell across from Jake's. She was a woman. In her 30s, with short brown hair and intelligent eyes. Her clothes were torn and dirty, but she held herself like someone who wasn't broken yet. "Lisa Chen," she said, when she saw Jake looking at her. "Dr. Lisa Chen, xenobiologist from the research vessel Nova. Jake Morrison, Navy SEALs." "They get you?" "My ship was studying the migration patterns of space whales near the Vega system. The Zephyrians attacked us without warning. Killed most of my crew." Lisa's voice was steady, but Jake could see the pain in her eyes. "What's a xenobiologist doing out here?" "I study alien life forms. Different species. How they behave. What makes them tick." Lisa looked around the prison. "Guess I'm about to get a much closer look than I wanted." Jake leaned forward. This was important. These combat beasts they use in the arena. You might know something about them. Lisa nodded slowly. I've heard stories. The Zephyrians have been collecting predators for centuries. They take the most dangerous creature from each world they conquer and bring them here. What can you tell me about predator behavior? Why do you want to know? Jake looked at Nix and Gruka, then back at Lisa. It's 'cause I'm going to survive this. And maybe, if we're smart about it, we can all get out of here. Nix made a sound that might have been laughter. Human, you don't understand. These aren't just big animals. Some of them are smart. Some of them hunt in packs. Some of them can turn invisible or spit acid or move faster than your eyes can follow. Every predator has weaknesses, Jake said calmly. Every pack has a hierarchy. Every creature has instincts that can be used against it. Lisa studied Jake for a long moment. You're serious about this? Dead serious? She began to pace in her small cell. All right, start with the basics. Most predators from different worlds will have certain things in common. They'll be territorial. They'll have ways of showing dominance and submission. They'll respond to threats in predictable ways. For the next several hours, Lisa shared everything she knew about predator behavior across different species. Jake listened carefully, asking questions and taking mental notes. Nix and Grutka joined the conversation, sharing what they had observed during their time in the Coliseum. On the 5th day, General Vex came to visit Jake's cell. The Zephyrian commander looked pleased about something. Human warrior, Vex said. You are fortunate. The Emperor has declared a special celebration. 3 of your human colonies have fallen to our forces. To mark this victory, we will hold the greatest games in 50 years. Jake kept his face neutral. What does that mean for us? Vex's reptilian mouth twisted into what might have been a smile. It means you will have the honor of fighting in the grand finale. All the combat beasts will be released at once. Any prisoners who survive the preliminary fights will face them together. How many beasts? 12. The finest killers from 12 different worlds. Vex leaned closer to the energy barrier. Tell me, human, do you believe in your gods? Why? Because you should pray to them. Tomorrow, you will meet creatures that your people's nightmares could never imagine. After Vex left, the cell was quiet for a long time. Finally, Nix spoke up. Jake, I'm sorry. I was starting to believe your plan might work. But 12 beasts at once. That's a death sentence for everyone. Jake looked at his fellow prisoners. Lisa was staring at him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Grutka was making soft wind sounds that might have been prayers. Even Corvin had stopped rocking and was listening. Maybe Jake said quietly. Or maybe it's exactly what we need. What do you mean? Lisa asked. Jake stood up and walked to the energy barrier. Somewhere above them, 500,000 Zephyrians were getting ready to watch him die. But Jake Morrison had spent his entire adult life preparing for impossible situations. He said that tomorrow they're going to learn something about humans that they really should have figured out before they started this war. The morning of the Great Games arrived with the sound of roaring crowds above. Jake could hear hundreds of thousands of voices cheering and chanting in the Zephyrian language. The stone walls of his cell vibrated with the noise. Guards came for the prisoners early. They were given armor that looked ceremonial rather than protective, thin metal plates that would do nothing against claws or teeth. Jake noticed the armor was designed to look good for the crowd, not to keep them alive. Time to die with honor, one guard said in broken English. Laughing at his own joke, they marched the prisoners through the tunnels beneath the Coliseum. Jake counted every turn, every guard post, every exit they passed. Even now, he was gathering information for an escape that might never come. The preliminary fights had been going on for hours. Through gaps in the tunnel walls, Jake could see into the arena. He watched as various aliens fought each other with primitive weapons while the crowd cheered. Most fights ended quickly and brutally. Lisa walked beside him, her face pale but determined. Jake, I've been thinking about what you said, about every predator having weaknesses. What did you figure out? The beasts they're going to release, they're all from different worlds, different environments, different prey, different hunting styles. They've never worked together before. Jake nodded. That was useful information. They reached a large chamber where all the surviving prisoners were gathered. Jake counted 23 beings from a dozen different species. Some looked like warriors, others like civilians who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. All of them looked terrified. Nyx and Gruka stayed close to Jake. Even Corvin was with them, though he still hadn't spoken since Jake's arrival. A Zephyrian official in fancy robes addressed the group. Today you fight for the glory of the Empire. You will face the greatest predators from across the galaxy. Fight well, and your deaths will be remembered. Fight poorly, and you will be forgotten before your blood dries on the sand. The crowd. Noise grew louder. Through the tunnel ahead, Jake could see bright sunlight and the arena floor. Prisoners, the official announced, enter the Grand Coliseum. They walked out into the arena, and Jake had to stop for a moment. The Coliseum was enormous, bigger than anything he had imagined. Tiers of seats rose up in all directions, filled with Zephyrians and other alien species. Banners and holographic displays showed the emblems of the Empire. The noise was deafening. The arena floor was about the size of 10 football fields. It had been designed to look like different environments. There were rocky hills on one side, a thick forest of alien trees in another section, and what looked like a swamp in the far corner. A river ran through the middle. Strange plants grew everywhere. In the center of the arena stood a platform where the Emperor sat on a throne made of black metal. General Vex was beside him, along with other high-ranking Zephyrians. They were all watching Jake with interest. The prisoners spread out across the arena floor, most of them headed for whatever cover they could find. Jake walked to the center, looking around calmly. The crowd's noise died down as they watched the small humans standing alone in the middle of the killing ground. A voice boomed across the arena, speaking in the universal language so everyone could understand. Citizens of the Empire, today we celebrate our victory over the humans. 3 more worlds have fallen to our might. To mark this glorious day, we present the greatest hunt in 50 years. The crowd roared approval. 12 creatures, 12 apex, predators from 12 conquered worlds. Against them, the survivors of our recent campaigns. Let the hunt begin. Jake looked up at the royal platform. Emperor Zaxxon was leaning forward in his throne, watching Jake specifically. The human had caught his attention by standing in the open while everyone else hid. The first gate opened on the north side of the arena. What came out looked like a giant wolf, but it was wrong in ways that hurt to look at. Its fur was black and seemed to absorb light. Its eyes glowed red, and when it moved, it left behind after images like it existed in several places at once. Voidstalker, Lisa whispered from where she had taken cover behind a rock. From the shadow worlds. They can phase in and out of reality. The creature looked around the arena, then focused on a prisoner who was trying to hide in the forest. Section. The Voidstalker seemed to flicker, and suddenly it was across the arena, tearing the alien apart with claws that could cut through steel. The crowd cheered. The second gate opened. 3 creatures came out together, looking like velociraptors, made of living crystal. Their bodies reflected the arena lights like prisms, and their claws left deep gouges in the stone floor. Crystal raptors, Lisa called out. Pack hunters from the Silicon worlds. Those claws can cut through almost anything. More gates opened. A creature that looked like a bear, covered in flames, emerged from the east gate. From the west came something like a giant hawk with electricity crackling between its feathers. Each new predator was more terrifying than the last. Jake stood in the center of it all, watching calmly as death surrounded him. The crowd was going wild. They had expected the prisoners to run and hide, to be hunted down one by one. Instead, this strange human was just standing there, not even holding a weapon. The 9th gate opened and something that defied description slithered out. It was like a cross between an octopus and a spider, with tentacles that dripped acid and eyes that seemed to see into your soul. The 10th gate revealed creatures that looked like living shadows with too many teeth. The 11th gate opened with a sound like thunder, and out came something Jake recognized from Lisa's descriptions. A plasma bear, standing 12 feet tall, its fur glowing with internal fire. Finally, the 12th gate opened. The crowd went silent as the largest creature Jake had ever seen emerged. It was like a dragon, and a centipede had a baby the size of a subway train. Its scales were black as space, and acid dripped from its mouth, hissing where it hit the ground. Titan verm, Lisa breathed. The ultimate predator. Nothing has ever killed one in single combat. Now all 12 creatures were in the arena. The other prisoners were scattered and hiding, most of them already dead or dying. The predators began to spread out, following their instincts to hunt. But something strange was happening. The Void Stalker, which had been moving toward another prisoner, suddenly stopped. Its glowing red eyes fixed on Jake. It tilted its head like it was trying to understand something. The crystal raptors paused in their hunt. All 3 of them turned toward Jake, their prismatic bodies reflecting his image in fractured rainbows. One by one, each of the 12 predators stopped what they were doing and looked at the human standing alone in the center of the arena. The crowd's cheers faded to confused murmurs. This wasn't what was supposed to happen. The beasts should be hunting, killing, putting on a show. Instead, they were all staring at one small human. Jake didn't move. He stood perfectly still, his arms at his sides, looking back at the creatures that surrounded him. The Void Stalker took a step toward Jake. Then another. Its red eyes never left the human's face. The crowd held its breath. The massive predator reached Jake and stopped just inches away. For a moment that seemed to last forever, human and creature looked at each other. Then slowly, the Void Stalker lowered its head. The arena erupted in confused shouts. Emperor Zaxxon stood up from his throne, staring in disbelief. The crystal raptors approached next. The pack leader sniffed the air around Jake. Then it too bowed its crystalline head. The plasma bear lumbered over, its fiery fur casting dancing shadows on the arena floor. It reached Jake and sat down like an enormous deadly dog, one by one. Each of the 12 apex predators approached Jake Morrison. One by one, they lowered their heads in submission. The Titan verm was the last. The massive creature slithered across the arena, leaving a trail of acid-scarred stone behind it. When it reached Jake, it coiled its enormous body around him like a protective wall, and lowered its huge head until it was level with the human. Jake reached out slowly and touched the creature's scales. They were warm and surprisingly smooth. The Grand Coliseum had gone completely silent. 500,000 beings stared in shock at the impossible scene before them. Jake Morrison, single human, stood surrounded by 12 of the galaxy's most dangerous predators, and every one of them was treating him like their leader. Jake looked up at the royal platform where Emperor Zaxxon sat frozen in disbelief. When Jake spoke, his voice carried clearly across the silent arena. "Your Majesty," Jake said calmly, "I think we need to talk." The silence in the Grand Coliseum stretched on for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Emperor Zaxxon stared down at Jake Morrison, who stood calmly surrounded by 12 of the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Had their head lowered in respect like dogs greeting their master, General Vex was the first to break the silence, leaned over to the Emperor and whispered something urgent. Emperor Zaxxon shook his head slowly, as if trying to wake up from a dream. In the prisoner holding area beneath the arena, Dr. Lisa Chen watched through a crack in the tunnel wall. Her scientific mind was racing as she tried to understand what she was seeing. The other surviving prisoners gathered around her, all of them staring in amazement. "How is this possible?" Nix asked, his gills fluttering with excitement. "Those creatures should have torn him apart by now." Lisa's eyes were wide with realization. "I think I know what's happening." "Jake, you brilliant fool, what do you mean?" Gruka asked in his windy voice. "Earth," Lisa said, her voice filled with wonder. "Earth is a death world." The other prisoners looked confused. Lisa tried to explain quickly. "Most worlds in the galaxy are peaceful places. Gentle climates, stable environments, creatures that evolve slowly without much competition. But Earth is different. Earth is a nightmare world where everything tries To kill everything else? In the arena, Jake was slowly moving among the creatures. The Voidstalker walked beside him like a loyal guard dog. The crystal raptors flanked him in perfect formation. The massive Titan Worm followed behind, its enormous body coiled protectively around the group. The crowd was starting to make noise again, but it wasn't cheering. It was confused, murmuring, fearful whispers, and angry shouts. They had paid to see Emperor Zaxxon finally found his voice. "What sorcery is this?" he demanded, his voice booming across the arena through the sound system. Jake looked up at the royal platform. When he spoke, his voice was calm and steady. "No sorcery, Your Majesty, just biology. Explain yourself, human." Jake gestured to the creatures around him. "These animals recognize something in me, something that your people don't understand." General Vex stood up. "You speak in riddles. Our beasts are the finest killers in the galaxy. They bow to no one." "They bow to me," Jake said simply, "because they know what I am." Lisa was explaining the same thing to the prisoners in the tunnels below. Every creature on Earth had to fight for survival against impossible odds. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years. Volcanoes that blocked out the sun. Asteroids that wiped out entire species. Plagues that killed most of the life on the planet. She pointed toward the arena where Jake was now walking among the predators like he belonged with them. Humans didn't just survive all of that. We thrived. Became the apex predator on a world where everything else was also an apex predator. We're the only species that fought its way to the top of a planet full of dinosaurs, saber-toothed tigers, giant bears and wolves that could crush bones with their bite. In the arena, Jake was demonstrating exactly what Lisa meant. He approached the plasma bear, a creature that could melt steel with its body heat. The bear sniffed him and then rolled. Over on its back like a pet wanting its belly rubbed. "You see," Jake called up to the Emperor, "these creatures can smell it on me. They can sense what humans really are." "And what is that?" Emperor Zaxxon demanded. Jake's voice carried across the silent arena. "We're the species that looked at a world full of monsters and decided we belonged at the top of the food chain." Crowd was getting restless. Some Zephyrians were standing up and shouting. They'd come to see blood and death, not a conversation. General Vex was furious. "This is impossible. No creature submits to prey." "That's where you're wrong," Jake said. Walked over to one of the crystal raptors and ran his hand along its prismatic back. The creature purred like a giant cat. "I'm not prey. I never was," Lisa continued her explanation to the other prisoners. "Every human carries the genetic memory of 1 billion years of survival. We smell like predators to other predators because that's exactly what we are. The most successful predators in the history of our world." Jake was now standing next to the Titan worm's massive head. The creature's eyes, each one bigger than Jake's entire body, watched him with what almost looked like affection. "This one," Jake said, pointing to the Titan worm, "is from a world where it never had any real competition. It grew up as the only apex predator on its planet. It's been lonely its entire life." Jake placed his hand on the creature's snout. "But it recognizes me as an equal, maybe even as a superior. Because humans come from a world where we had to compete with creatures just as dangerous as this one, and we won." Emperor Zaxxon was losing control of the situation. The crowd was getting angry. Some were throwing things into the arena. Others were demanding their money back. "Guards!" the Emperor shouted. "Kill the human! Kill all of them!" But something unexpected happened. The Zephyrian guards hesitated. They were looking at Jake, surrounded by 12 apex predators, all of them clearly protecting him, and they were. Afraid, General Vex drew his weapon, but before he could fire, the Void Stalker flickered across the arena in the blink of an eye and appeared on the royal platform. The creature's red eyes glowed as it snarled at the general, who dropped his weapon and stepped back in terror. Jake's voice cut through the chaos. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." The arena fell silent again. Jake was no longer just a prisoner, who had somehow tamed some animals, was clearly in command of the situation. "You see," Jake continued, "these creatures have been waiting their whole lives for someone worthy of their respect, someone who understands what it means to be a true predator." The Stormhawks landed on the royal platform, electricity crackling between their feathers. Emperor Zaxxon and his guards were now surrounded by the very creatures they had used to kill thousands of prisoners. "What do you want?" Emperor Zaxxon asked, his voice shaking. Jake smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just realized he held all the cards. "I want you to release every human prisoner in your empire. I want your forces to withdraw from all human worlds. And I want you to spread the word to every species in the galaxy about what happened here today. And if we refuse?" Jake looked around at the 12 apex predators who were now clearly his to command. "Then you'll find out why Earth has never been conquered, and why it never will be." The crystal raptors moved closer to the royal platform, their diamond claws clicking on the stone. The plasma bear stood up and roared, a sound that shook the entire Coliseum. General Vex looked at Jake with something that might have been respect mixed with fear. "How?" he asked. "How does one human control creatures that have killed thousands?" Jake's answer was simple. "Because they're not controlling me, I'm not controlling them. We're recognizing each other for what we really are." He gestured to the massive Titan verm that was coiled protectively around the arena. Every creature here spent its life being the most dangerous thing on its world. But they all came from worlds where they were alone at the top. Earth was different. On Earth, we had competition. Jake looked directly at Emperor Zaxxon. "We had to fight dire wolves and cave bears and saber-toothed cats and giant sharks and creatures that would give your people nightmares. We didn't just survive them, we outlasted them all." The implications of Jake's words were sinking in throughout the Coliseum. If humans were this dangerous, if they could command the respect of the galaxy's apex predators just by existing, what did that mean for the Zephyrian Empire's plans for conquest? Lisa understood it perfectly. She was explaining to the other prisoners who were listening in amazement, "Don't you see? Every human is the descendant of survivors who looked at impossible odds and refused to give up. We're the species that survived ice ages and plagues and predators that could tear us apart with their bare hands. And we didn't just survive. We became the predators." In the arena, Jake was proving her point. He walked among creatures that could kill him in seconds, and they followed him like he was their pack leader, because, in a very real sense, he was. Emperor Zaxxon stared down at Jake Morrison for a long moment. The ruler of the Zephyrian Empire was trapped on his own platform, surrounded by creatures that could tear him apart in seconds. The Stormhawks perched on the arms of his throne, electricity crackling from their feathers. The Void Stalker prowled back and forth in front of him, its red eyes never leaving his face. Below in the arena, Jake stood calmly among the remaining predators. The Titan verm had coiled its massive body around the center of the arena, creating a protective wall. The crystal raptors flanked Jake like honor guards. The plasma bear sat beside him, its fiery fur casting dancing shadows on the ground. "It cannot be serious," Emperor Zaxxon said finally. "You expect us to abandon our conquest of human space because of this? It's a trick." Jake's voice carried clearly across the silent Coliseum. "It's not a trick, Your Majesty. It's evolution." General Vex, who had been watching everything with growing alarm, stepped forward. "Even if what you say is true, even if humans are these apex predators you claim to be, you are still just one man. What can one human do against an entire empire?" Smiled. It was a cold smile that made the general take a step back. "You're about to find out." Jake raised his hand, and every creature in the arena responded instantly. The Stormhawks took flight, circling the Coliseum like living lightning. The Crystal Raptors spread out in perfect formation. The Void Stalker flickered between the shadows, appearing and disappearing around the royal platform. The crowd was panicking now. Zephyrians were pushing and shoving to get to the exits, but the arena had been designed to keep people in, not to let them out quickly. Sight of their most prized combat beasts, following the orders of a human. Prisoner was breaking something fundamental in their worldview. "Stop this," Emperor Zaxxon commanded. "Guards, activate the containment systems." But the guards were frozen in terror. They had seen what these creatures could do to armed warriors. None of them wanted to be the first to try shooting at beasts that were now clearly protecting the human. Jake looked up at the Emperor. "Your guards are smart. They understand what you don't. This isn't about one human anymore. It's about what humanity represents." Dr. Lisa Chen and the other prisoners had been brought up from the tunnels. Zephyrian guards escorted them into the arena, but they kept their distance from Jake and his new companions. Lisa approached Jake carefully, still amazed by what she was seeing. "Jake," she said quietly, "do you understand what you've done?" "I think so. But tell me what you see." Lisa looked around at the 12 apex predators that were all focused on Jake. "You've just proven that humans are the apex predators of the galaxy. Every species that sees this recording will know that Earth isn't just another world to be conquered. It's the home of something far more dangerous than they imagined." Jake nodded. "That's the idea." Emperor Zaxxon was trying to regain control of the situation. "Even if we agree to your demands, what guarantee do we have that you won't turn these creatures against us?" "You don't," Jake said simply. "But you have my word that if you withdraw from human space and release all human prisoners, these creatures will return to their holding areas peacefully. And if we refuse," Jake gestured to the Titan Varm that surrounded them, "then you'll discover what happens when 12 apex predators decide they don't like their current living arrangements." As if to emphasize the point, the plasma bear stood up and roared. The sound echoed through the Coliseum like thunder, and several Zephyrians in the crowd fainted from fear. General Vex was studying Jake with new respect. "You planned this, didn't you? From the moment you were captured?" "Not exactly," Jake admitted. "I knew I had to survive whatever they threw at me, but I didn't expect this." He gestured to the creatures around him. "I just knew that if I stayed calm and showed no fear, predators would respect that." "But how did you know they would submit to you?" Jake's answer surprised everyone, "Because I've worked with military dogs my entire career. The principles are the same. Show confidence, show strength, show that you're not afraid, and pack animals will accept you as a leader." Lisa was shaking her head in amazement. "But these aren't dogs, Jake. These are apex predators from 12 different worlds." "The basic instincts are the same," Jake replied. "Every pack needs an alpha. Every predator recognizes strength when they see it. And every creature respects someone who isn't afraid of them." Emperor Zaxxon was having a whispered conversation with his advisors. Jake could see the fear in their faces as they looked down at the arena. Finally, the Emperor stood up. "Human," he called out, "if we agree to your terms, how do we know your people won't use this knowledge to attack our empire?" Jake considered the question seriously. "'Cause humans don't start wars, Your Majesty. We finish them." The implications of that statement hung in the air. If one human could command the loyalty of 12 apex predators just by being himself, what could Earth's entire military do if they put their minds to it? "Besides," Jake continued, "you started this war when you attacked human colonies. All I'm doing is ending it." Emperor Zaxxon looked around his empire's greatest arena. The crowd was still in chaos. His guards were afraid to move, his most powerful. Weapons were now following the orders of his enemy. "It's very well," he said finally. "We accept your terms. All human prisoners will be released. Our forces will withdraw from human space. But in return, you must guarantee that these creatures will not be used against us." Jake nodded. "You have my word." He turned to address the Titan Verm directly. The massive creature lowered its head until it was level with Jake's face. Jake placed his hand on the creature's snout. "You understand, don't you?" said softly. You've been alone for so long, but you don't have to be anymore. The Titan worm made a sound that was almost like purring, a deep rumble that vibrated through the ground. Jake looked up at Emperor Zaxxon. I'm going to make you a deal. I'll return 11 of these creatures to their holding areas. But this one, he gestured to the Titan worm, comes with me? Absolutely not, General Vex protested. That creature is worth more than entire fleets. That creature, Jake said firmly, has been a prisoner just like I was. It deserves freedom. Titan worm coiled protectively around Jake, making it clear that it agreed with this arrangement. Emperor Zaxxon sighed. Very well, but if that creature causes any damage... It won't, Jake promised, because it will be with me. Ow! Over the next several hours, Jake worked with the arena handlers to return the other 11 creatures to their containment areas. Each one went peacefully, but only after Jake personally escorted them and gave them permission to go. The crystal raptors were the hardest to separate from Jake. The pack leader kept looking back at him as if asking if it was really okay to leave. Jake knelt down and placed his hand on the creature's crystalline head. It's okay, he said. You're not alone anymore. You know there are others like you out there now. As the creatures were led away, news of what had happened in the arena was spreading across the galaxy. Video recordings of a human commanding 12 apex predators were being broadcast on every major news network. The story was growing with each telling. Dr. Lisa Chen was released, along with all the other human prisoners. As they prepared to leave Zephyr Prime on a ship provided by the Empire, she approached Jake one last time. Do you realize what you've started? She asked. Jake was standing next to the Titan worm, which had been fitted with a special harness that would allow it to travel in the ship's cargo bay. The creature seemed happy for the first time since its capture. I ended a war, Jake said, and I made a friend. You did more than that. Every species in the galaxy is going to hear this story. They're going to know that humans aren't just another race to be conquered. We're the species that evolved on a death world and survived everything it could throw at us.
Oh.
Jake nodded. Good. Maybe now they'll think twice before starting wars with Earth. As their ship lifted off from Zephyr Prime, Jake looked out the window at the planet below. The Grand Coliseum was still visible, looking small from this height. But Jake knew that what had happened there would be remembered for generations. The Titan worm had curled up in the cargo bay, finally at peace. Jake sat beside his new companion. Thinking about everything that had led to this moment, he had started this mission as Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, Navy SEAL. He was returning home as something else entirely, the human who had walked into an arena of certain death and emerged as the alpha of 12 apex predators. But more than that, he was returning as proof of something the galaxy was just beginning to understand. Humans weren't just another species. They were the children of Earth, the death world that had forged them into something the universe had never seen before, and now everyone knew it.